Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. This is Father Jonathan. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to continue our reflections on the Christian virtues, the virtues that manifest themselves and we strive for, we pursue in Orthodox spiritual life as we understand it. And without any further delay, allow me to begin first by saying over the next few days, I will be reflecting on these virtues of the Christian life. And while I could choose any number of them, I wanted to give some structure and cohesion to these reflections. And so I will draw upon what St. Paul calls the fruit of the Spirit as our sampling of the Christian virtues. And as he writes, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. And I will work through these in reverse order. In doing so, I will try to show that they can be seen as a path to an ever-deepening, ever-expanding progress towards a more authentic union with our Lord, which, as we've heard before over the past few weeks, is our ultimate goal as Orthodox Christians, as we understand it. Union with God, communion with God, theosis, deification, these are all ways of describing how we are called to and we orient ourselves ultimately towards that union with God. And so today I will begin with the final of these virtues, which is self-control. And interestingly, we have just come off a long period of time that is dedicated, in part at least, to cultivating this virtue. That is Great Lent, with its many important qualities, can be seen as a time set aside during the year for us to cultivate a greater degree of self-control. This happens first and foremost through fasting, because we do not merely fast to watch what we eat. We also don't fast because God has some preference about what goes into our mouths. In fact, Christ even says that it's what comes out of our mouths that is more important. And in order for us to get in the habit of self-control in other aspects of our lives, like guarding our tongue or refraining from harming others, we train ourselves to have some self-control around something a little bit easier. That is self-control around our food intake. As this week we began our regular Wednesday and Friday fasting with some relaxation around wine and oil during the Paschal and Pentecost season, it's important for us to recontextualize this practice, because in recontextualizing it, we can begin to understand what we're really aiming for. This idea of self-control. If I can have control over my belly, if I can have control over something that's pretty easy in the grand scheme of things, I might be able to have some self-control when it comes to how I treat the other, what I say, what I do, how I act. And so if I can guard what goes into my mouth or choose rightly what goes into my mouth, which is proper to the season, then when the time comes to make a harder decision, or even to make any decision about how we are going to act in the midst of the world and with the people that surround us, we'll be more inclined to make a choice before we act. And that's a really important thing. Self-control gives us space, a pause between when we think or don't think, we have a stimulus, and act. That little adding of time in between the thought or the not thought and the kind of immediate reaction to what's going on in us. And in doing so, we can make a choice about what we're going to do. We can choose the better option. We can choose the good over the not so good. We can choose to live more virtuously rather than vice-ridden lives. But it takes self-control. It takes some discipline. It takes forming a habit of creating space in time to pause and think before we act. And this is just one way that the virtues can give shape to a whole new way of life. A whole new way of life where we're not so impulsive or reactive, but thoughtful and loving in the way that we conduct ourselves. I hope you're doing well. I hope these videos prove edifying. We'll continue the conversation tomorrow about the next virtue, gentleness. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out, email us, call us, send us a message on social media. We are here for you. We love you. We're praying for you. Christos Anesti, Christ is risen.